Hi, in this video, I'm going to talk about some advanced Java features, especially those which came in after version 8. So one of them is lambda expressions. So what is a lambda expression? It's a concise representation of an anonymous function. Since it's anonymous, it doesn't have a name. It has a list of parameters, a body, a return type, also possibly a list of exceptions that can be thrown. It can be passed around like any other object to methods. As you see here, this is the format of a lambda expression. So it consists of 0 or more parameters, which are known as lambda parameters. There's an arrow, and then there's expression or code block, which is known as lambda body. So let's dive into some source code. So I have this project called Advanced Java, and there's a class called Runnable Lambda, which has a public static void main method. Now, before Java version 8 was released, if we wanted to have a thread which runs some task, let's say printing something out on the terminal. So before Java 8, we would write a code something like this. We'll have a new thread, a new runnable anonymous inner class. We'll have to override a public method called as run and write our code within that. Now, if you see, this code is pretty verbose just to print something on the terminal. Now with lambda expressions, it's become very easy. So all you have to do is write this line. So here's a lambda expression. There's no parameters. There's an arrow and then the code that we want to execute. So this one line replaced the entire anonymous function that we saw in the above code. Now this lambda can also be assigned to a variable like here. So we define a runnable variable r and assign the lambda to it, and then pass the variable r to a new thread and start the thread. Now here we saw a lambda with 0 parameters. Let's take a look at lambda which has parameters. So here's a class lambda parameters. So there's a person class and I'm instantiating 3 objects of person with name Bob, Alice and Tom, and I add these persons to a list of person object. Now let's say I want to sort this list based on the age of the person. So before Java 8, the way we would write it is we would have a comparator of type person. We would have the new comparator anonymous inner class, override the public int compare method, and then return integer dot compare with the two ages. Now again, there is a quite verbose code for just comparing the ages of the persons. Now with lambda, the way we write it is like this. So we would have two parameters. I've named it 1 and 2, but you can name it anything that you want. It's just a variable name. Then we have the lambda arrow and then the code which is integer.compare 1.age and 2.age. This can again be simplified using code like this. So comparator interface has a comparing method. So we can pass a method reference such as person : get age. Now we'll get what a method reference is in a moment, but there's another way of simplifying the code. So before we go into depth for method reference, so there are 4 types of method references. We'll take a look at each one of them. So the forms the method reference can take are object : instance method, class : instance method, class : static method, and constructor reference. So let's check the code and see how each one of these can be used. So I have a method references class here, and I'm going to use a list of string. So basically I iterate over each elements of that string and then call system.out : print. So this is a example of object instance method. So this is equivalent to writing a lambda like this, where we have a parameter x, we have the arrow lambda expression, and then we pass the parameter x to system.out.println as an argument. Next, we take a look at the instance method via class name. Again, I use the same string list and then .stream.map. For the moment, just ignore stream and map. We'll be covering those in subsequent videos. The important thing to focus on here is string : length. So this is equivalent to writing a lambda like with a parameter x, then the arrow, and then we call the length method on that parameter x. Note the subtle difference between this and the previous one. In the previous one, the parameter x was passed as a reference to the println method. However, in this case, we are calling the length method on the parameter object itself. So that's the subtle difference between object instance method and the instance method via class name. Next, we have the static method reference. So I have an integer list here. Again, just ignore stream and reduce methods for the moment. The thing to focus is math : min. So math is a class within java.lang, and it has a static public static min method which returns an integer, basically minimum of 2 integers. So since this is static, this is a way to call the static method reference. The fourth one is the constructor reference. So again, so I have the names list of string here, and the thing to note here is the person : new. So this is the way to call the constructor method reference. It is equivalent to writing a lambda like this, where we have a parameter called name, and we use that parameter to create a new object of the person class. So this is how we can use the 4 types of method references. Next, we move on to an important topic called functional interface. A functional interface is an interface with a single abstract method. It can be a target to a lambda expression or a method reference. It is recommended to annotate such interfaces with the annotation @functional interface. Note that it is a recommended one and not a mandatory one. So again, if we circle back to the runnable lambda class that we just saw, we were able to write this lambda function here because the runnable interface is a functional interface. So let's take a look at the definition of the functional interface. If you see, it is annotated with @functional interface. So since it is a functional interface, we are able to write a lambda function for that. Even the lambda with parameters, we use the comparator. So if we inspect the definition, here also it's marked as @functional interface. Now, what if we want to write our own functional interface, right? So let's take a look at example here, my functional interface. So I have annotated it with @functional interface. It has a abstract method called sample method, which returns an integer. So as you see, there's a default method and a static method. However, the count of abstract method is 1. So this satisfies the definition of a functional interface. So let's say I try adding another abstract method and see what happens. So if you see, the compiler has started complaining. It says multiple non-overriding abstract methods found in the interface. So this is the advantage of annotating it with @functional interface. So in case by mistake you try to add the second abstract method, the compiler would stop you from doing that. The functional interface can have default and static methods. Both default and static methods have implementation, so they don't count against the abstract method count of a functional interface. So again, we saw here we have a default method called print hello world, which has a concrete implementation. We even have a static method called sample static method, which has a concrete implementation as well. So these two method doesn't count towards the abstract method count for the functional interface. One very important thing to note here is the definition of functional interface excludes method in an interface that are also public methods in an object class. So what do I mean by that? So let's take a look at the documentation of the comparator interface. So I'm here in the official documentation of Java. So let's scroll down here a bit and take a look at the abstract methods tab. If you see, there are two methods, two abstract methods defined. So what's going on? Just moments back we said a functional interface is an interface which has only one abstract method. But if you closely take a look at the second one, it's the equals method, which is also present in the object class. So this doesn't count towards the abstract method count for the functional interface. So technically, comparator is still a functional interface, and that's why we are able to use that in Lambda expressions. If we check the functional interface definition on the official documentation page also, if you see, it clearly says if a functional interface declares an abstract method overriding one of the public methods of java.lang.object, that also does not count towards the interface's abstract method count, since any implementation of the interface will have an implementation from java.lang.object or elsewhere. I've also provided two links here, which also talks about the Java specification, which details about the same thing that we discussed. Now coming back to my functional interface, we saw how we have the default method with a concrete implementation. Now if you remember, prior to Java version 8, the interface didn't have any implemented methods. So with Java version 8 and above, we can have concrete implementation methods within the interface. Now this default method gives rise to a tricky situation, which we'll take a look at next. Let's say a class implements two interfaces, each of which contains the same default method with different implementations. Now what would happen in this case? So there are three scenarios that we need to be careful of. In first case, let's say there's a conflict between the method in a class and the default method in any of the interface. In such cases, the class always wins, meaning the method implementation method inside the class will get executed all the time. Now the second scenario is in case where the conflict comes between two interfaces where one is a descendant of the other. In that case, the descendant wins, same like classes. In the third scenario, there's no inheritance relationship between the two defaults, and let's say the class doesn't have an implementation of that default method. In this case, the compiler will throw an error. The class will not compile. In order to overcome this, just simply override that method or just provide the implementation of that method inside the class, which would make it same like case number 1, and the class method will always win. So it's important to be aware of these scenarios, and we saw how each of these can be handled. So that's all I had in this video about Java Lambda expressions. Thanks for watching.